There is a phrase that all of you have been brought up with, which is, it is better to give than to receive. And I suggest to you that that's not true. In Acts in the Bible, where it's discussed it's better to give than to receive, it talks about giving of your clothes, your home, food to people who have less than you. It's about sharing your stuff, your things to help people live. What we have changed that into in modern North America and Europe is we've changed it to mean it is better to be a caregiver or to be a giver of any kind than to be on the receiving end of that. It's not an equal relationship. And so how many of you are really good at offering help? You wouldn't be in this room if all of you didn't raise your hands, so I'm just assuming that you're all raising your hands and you're just tired. How many of you are good at asking for or accepting help? Ooh, John. You're going to look at me now because I don't want to look at you. And that's because of this. We genuinely, deep in our hearts, believe it is better to give than to receive. And therefore, asking for help is a sign of weakness. Accepting help is a sign of dependence, and we are an independent lot. We're brought up to be independent. We used to have a village to raise a child, and a village to help people who were ill. Now you're on your own, basically, unless you have good insurance. Which really isn't good insurance at all. So I suggest to you that in order for you to help people receive your care, you have to understand what it feels like to receive it, to ask for it, and to accept it with an open heart. Because when you are good at receiving it, you will be better at giving. Because it will be an unconditional giving as opposed to I'm doing this partly to feel good for myself. Because it's better to give, therefore we're getting more out of it than if we're on the receiving. It's a very important distinction. It is one of the reasons why we hear of elderly people eating cat food. Because they don't want to burden anyone with going to the grocery store for it. We have this almost insane fear of being a burden to people. Whereas if you can ask for help without being too bossy about where's the food? Like I told you like 10 minutes ago, where are you? On the cell phone. But if you can ask for help, if you can accept it genuinely with the same spirit that you offer and give it, then it becomes a mutual relationship. If you can't do that, it's a one-way relationship. And you will always be on the winning end as long as you are the caregiver. And I will always feel a burden of gratitude because you're not allowing me to give back to you. Mary was a nurse who came to visit my mother regularly, visiting home nurse from the VON. And Mary was wonderful. She always came in with lots of energy, enthusiasm. Life was great. She was really loved her work. One day, however, she came and clearly the energy level was lower, something was bothering her. My mother was about this high and said, Mary, what's up? And Mary just sort of poo-pawed, I'm fine, you've got enough to worry about kind of stuff. If you had met my mother, you would know that that was not a good answer. And so after a little more pestering, Mary said, well, actually, later today I have to go to school. My son's in grade 6, he's having a little trouble, and I have to go to one of those parent-teacher meetings about him. And my mother said, interesting, you should mention that. I have a son, she didn't mention any names, who was also in grade 6, and we had a similar kind of meeting, so maybe I could help you. And so for a few minutes, while Mary was giving my mother a bed bath, my mother was providing her some advice, some motherly advice. Now, Mary didn't do this because it was a technique she learned at a workshop. It was a genuine, okay, if you want to help me, this is what I need. And so they talked. And for the first time in my mother's medical history, a medical provider, care provider, treated her as an equal. It wasn't care provider, care receiver, it wasn't patient nurse, it was mother to mother. Now, one mother was giving the bed bath and the other one was receiving it, but it was still two mothers. Mary left with more energy than she had left. My mother was completely exhausted. This was a few weeks before she died. But she went to sleep and had a sleep that she hadn't had for weeks. It was a deeper sleep. She was smiling. She had given back. It is about relationships, and it's about understanding that it has to be an equal one in order to have effect.